Hey there, welcome back to another game review episode of the Boardgame Sherpa. Today's game is another game that I absolutely had to have after doing research for my top 10 hot games of GenCon 2023 episode. This one is called Sky Team, and it's put out by Scorpion Masque and distributed by Hatchette Games. It's a two-player cooperative game designed by Luke Rimond and illustrated by Eric Hibbler and Adrian Rivs. It can take 20 minutes if you're good, less than 5 minutes if you're not. Seriously, when you're first learning this game, every sentence is punctuated with, if you don't do this, you'll immediately lose the game. You'll see. I was lucky enough to find out about this game at the exact right moment, and I was able to pre-order it before GenCon on the website and pick it up at the show. It was sold out of online pre-orders the very next day that I ordered. I'm not entirely sure when it comes out in retail, but look for it. When I picked it up at Hatchette Games in GenCon, they also gave me a free promo set for LaGuardia Airport in New York City. Being that was one of my local airports growing up in the Bronx, this game got even more interesting. Instead of trying to put the description into my own words, I'll just use the ones that were probably meticulously written specifically for the back box cover. Take the controls of a commercial airline and become a team of pilots. Coordinate your efforts and try to successfully land your plane. Feel all the tension from inside the cockpit. From Montreal to Tokyo, discover 11 airports and 21 exciting scenarios inspired by real landing conditions. Wind, kerosene leaks, traffic, ice. Each airport comes with its own set of challenges. I've had an interest in aviation for years. I even unsuccessfully attempted to get my pilot's license a few years ago. But a few weeks into taking lessons, I unceremoniously ran out of gas in my car. And I took that as an omen that I shouldn't be in charge of keeping a plane fueled up while in the air. But I still love aviation and getting up in the air. So this game immediately got my attention. The videos and promotional materials about the game prior to GenCon weren't very detailed. It was still early. So I was a little worried if Sky Team was going to be too frenetic or complicated in gameplay. But screw it, the components looked amazing and the artwork was gorgeous, so I'd at least have a good display game. So I got the game and the LaGuardia Promo at GenCon and brought it back to the hotel. My traveling buddy Eric was interested as well, so we decided to bring it down to the hotel conference room at the Notel Microtel later, and we started watching some how-to videos. The first thing we noticed is that there were two manuals, the landing procedure guide, which had the core game instructions, and the flight log, which had a warning on the cover not to open it before you successfully land in the start of Montreal Airport. One of the how-to-play videos we watched had the host saying they crashed multiple times on the starter mission, so Eric and I figured let's not overcomplicate it with the advanced missions, which was smart since it actually did take us a few tries to land the starter mission. Quick aside, the game manuals are actually pretty great and easy to follow, much better than any of the videos we watched. The out-of-the-box initial prep to the game was a little weird. The main control panel came with little glue strips that you had to permanently stick folded parts of the board together. I mean, the control panel is really cool, but some of the glued folds still don't make sense. Oh well, after some initial stress about turning this into a bad legacy game and screwing up something permanently, we were good to go. Even though that damn sticker on the access glass isn't perfect. Normal game setup is pretty easy. The control panel, which is the core of the game, is set up really nice and every inch of it is used efficiently and aesthetically. But then again, that was the thing that hooked me in the first place with Sky Team, so no surprise here. You add all the little doohickeys to the board, make one player the pilot, the other the co-pilot, give them their color-coded dice and screens, and then choose an airport. For the first game, we chose Montreal as suggested, but there are plenty of others with various difficulties like weather, ice, air traffic, and other things. I'll focus on the Montreal starter mission here. Once you get the basic gist of the game, the manual is very straightforward and easy to follow. You add the little plane tokens to the approach track according to what's on each box. These tokens signify air traffic between you and the airport, and you have to clear them all out of your way. Then, set your altitude track to 6,000 feet, which means that you have 7 turns to bring your jet in safely. Once everything is set up, it's time to play. At the beginning of each round, both players decide on what their strategy will be for the round. They then roll their dice behind the provided screen. At this point, the pilot and the co-pilot cannot discuss what's on their dice or what their dice placement should be. The overall goal over the next 7 rounds is to land your plane safely. And to do that, you have a bunch of tasks that you have to accomplish. And they are, number 1, keep the plane axis level. This action is mandatory each round. The pilot puts 1 die in the blue axis slot, and the co-pilot puts 1 die in the orange axis slot. They then compare the values. If the 2 dice are the same, the plane stays level. If they have different values, you take the difference between them and turn the axis disc that many clicks towards the player with the highest number. If you hit or go past the red X on the display, you do a barrel roll and immediately lose the game. Number 2, keep the engine speed to a reasonable level. Also a mandatory action each round. Both the pilot and co-pilot put their color-coded dice into the 2 engine slots. If the total of the 2 dice falls between the values of the landing gear marker, the blue one, and the flaps marker, the orange one, on the speed gauge, then you move the approach track 1 step closer. If the total falls short of the blue landing gear marker, the plane does not move at all on the approach tracker. If it is higher than the orange flaps marker, then the planes move up to 2 spaces ahead. 2 key things about this. Both the airport box on the approach track and the landed plane box on the altitude track have to be reached at the same time. Otherwise, you either over or undershoot the airport, and you immediately lose the game. So if you don't move on one turn, you better move 2 spaces on your next turn. Also, if you're moving the approach track and a plane token hits the edge of the control panel, that's a collision and you immediately lose the game, and probably your life. I'll explain how to clear the planes and how to move the flaps landing gear markers in the next step. Now, as long as you resolve both your engine and axis dice sometime during each round, you have the freedom of where and when to place your remaining dice. Just remember, everything has to get done before the final round is over. Here's what you need to do. Number 3, communicate with the tower to clear all the planes ahead of you on the approach track. To do this, each player has an option to put a die on their color-coded radio slot. The pilot has 1 slot per round, the co-pilot has 2 slots. What happens is if the place die shows a 1, you remove 1 plane from the current or 1 box on the approach track. If it's a 2, then you take 1 plane from the second box, and so on. This step is optional on each turn. Number 4, deploy the flaps. This one's for the co-pilot only. In order, the co-pilot places a die in each of the 4 flap spaces to deploy the flap. For example, the player puts a 1 or 2 value die in the first flap slot, and then moves the switch below it to on. Then, either in the same turn or a later turn, they need to put a 2 or 3 in the next flap slot to turn that one on, and so on in that order. Also, each time you deploy a flap, you move the orange flap marker up 1 space on the speed gauge, up to the 12th position. By the final landing, all 4 flaps need to be deployed, or you immediately lose the game. Number 5, deploy all the landing gear. This one is for the pilot only and is very similar to the flaps, with the exception that there are only 3 gears to deploy, and they can be done in any order. In this case, when you deploy the landing gear, you move the blue landing gear marker up 1 space on the speed gauge, up to the 7th position. And like the flaps, by the final landing, all landing gears need to be deployed, or you immediately lose the game. Number 6, deploy the brakes. The brakes only come into play during the final round, and they don't all need to be deployed to win the game, but the more you deploy, the easier chance of stopping the plane will be. Brakes are solely dependent on the pilot, and they have to be deployed in order. First the pilot has to place the 2, then the 4, then the 6. In the final round of the game, you compare your engine speed to your red brake marker. And if your speed is less than the brake marker, you stop the plane in time. Otherwise, you skid off the runway and immediately lose the game. So if you accomplish all these tasks successfully, you have landed the plane and win the game. There are also helpful things in the starter mission. Both the pilot and co-pilot can put any random value dice in the coffee slots to get a coffee token. These coffee tokens represent focus, and they will let you change the value of any die in your roll by 1. And they're cumulative, so you can spend 3 coffee tokens and change a 6 to a 3. That saved quite a few of our landings. The other helpful thing is that on different altitude boxes on the altitude track, you pick up reroll tokens. When you use them, one or both players can reroll as many dice as they want once during that round. And that's the basic starter game. When you get to the more advanced landings, there are a lot of other challenges, like an air traffic die that randomly puts new planes on your approach, or a kerosene module where you have to manage your fuel usage, or wind and ice challenges. But I'll let you figure them out once you land your starter mission. The manual is excellent in explaining the changes, so you probably won't have any issues there. If you do, there's always the forums on Board Game Geek, which should get your questions answered. What do I think about the game? First off, even the starter level is hard. And that's not a bad thing. It's not too hard, but it may take you a few tries to hit your landing perfectly. And that's a good thing. If it was too easy, you'd lose interest. And I certainly haven't lost interest yet. I can't wait till the next time I'm playing this with my friends. As I mentioned, the components are wonderful, efficient, and aesthetically pleasing. The box, components, and manual artwork by Eric Hibbler and Adrian Ribs is gorgeous. Also, you don't need to know anything about planes to enjoy playing or watching this game, but the in-flight drama is truly immersive. I'm not ready to go back to flying lessons anytime soon, but this game scratches that itch for me. I love that I got the LaGuardia Airport Promo, and it's a great introduction airport to the more advanced levels. And when my personal board game Sherpa, Johnny Rocks, and I finally beat LaGuardia, we really felt like we accomplished something good after a couple of failed landings. By now, I think it goes without saying that the game is actually fun to play. Mrs. Board Game Sherpa was afraid of Sky Team until she played it. It's not one of her go-to games, but she will play it without hesitation if I ask. I think the LaGuardia promo card really helped with that also. The bottom line, Sky Team by Scorpion Masque is another GenCon 2023 game that I absolutely love. I would give it a 10 for being a fun game that looks amazing. And when you finally win a specific airport, you get a real sense of accomplishment. And that's my review. If you enjoyed this video, you might like some of my other videos on the channel, so please check them out. And while you're at it, please subscribe to the channel and put a big thumbs up on this video. And if you agree or disagree, tell me so in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys think. See you next episode.